Welcome to the Eurostep Brit podcast.
Game's going to be decided here. Harrell spots up, doesn't go, put back is good! Roberto Gallina with a second chance opportunity. Aris lead. Per Gunter for three, got it! Per Gunter, drei Punkte! Cullen, pull up three, no good. Orcus, the offensive board, he turns around and shoots. Got it at the buzzer!
Hello, it's episode 21 of the Eurostep Brit podcast. We'll call this one A Bridge to Newcastle. Many years ago, in what feels like another lifetime, I was a journalist for a Barcelona magazine called Tip Off. And at one point, I did a series of features about young, up-and-coming British players called Brit Back. One of those I interviewed was Andrew Bridge, who went on to enjoy a long, successful career with both the Newcastle Eagles and Sheffield Sharks. In this episode, we'll not only look back on those years, but talk about his time at the Commonwealth Games, his thoughts on his former coaches that are now in the NBA, and of course a lot more. It's a bumper episode, so I hope you enjoy it. It was great to catch up with Andrew again after such a long time. So, without further ado, let's get to it. So, Andrew, welcome to the podcast. I think you're the first guest I've got on who I would have interviewed back in Tip Off magazine, which obviously ran, that was, I think, late 90s to about 2003. Something. We did a feature. I did a thing called the Brit Pack, and it was looking for ones for the future. And I got a feeling, of all the ones I interviewed, you're the only one who went on and had a good career. Now, at the time, you would have been at Sheffield. Now, if I remember rightly, when you were at Sheffield, and we'll go back to the rest of your career in a moment, but when you were at Sheffield, you weren't really getting a great deal of court time. Would that be fair?
Yeah, that's a fair assumption, but that was just the reality of the situation at the time. Like, if you looked at the team we had, so there in that team, like directly in my position, Ian McKinney, one of the greatest shooters, English shooters that ever played, had proven in the league, and just some guy called Terrell Myers, he was all right, wasn't he? So it's just the reality of the situation as it was at that time. So you couldn't really, I had no qualms about it. I was lucky in the sense I was part of that and getting that experience. And in a really good situation. I know there's a lot more to it than just playing time. Everybody focuses on playing time, and you want that opportunity. But I was young at that time. They were all proven. Sheffield was successful, really successful franchise at that time. So it's just there was a lot more to a lot more positive things about that whole situation that worked out for me, and it really kind of just gave me the grounding to go on and do everything else I was fortunate enough to do.
I say, looking back at the article, you obviously talk about Ian McKinney, his work ethic, his fitness levels, and obviously Pete Scantlebury as well. I mean, this is was this great learning opportunity for you to learn from these pros?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I think at the time, Pete was the best, longest tenured British player that played in the BBL and Budweiser League and all iterations of it. I think, it is a bit scary to think about, really, because I think he was like in his early 40s at that time, but the ability that he still had, like physically, was insane. And he constantly joked to me, he's like, "Bridgie, I've lost more hops than you'll ever have," which was true. But one of the things, with Scants, I always found really helpful, really encouraging, positive, but just in general as a guy, that I don't think I've ever heard any talk about, so funny and kind of bonding, in terms of someone that can bond a team together, that would never be seen publicly anywhere. But that was kind of him, his personality. And you kind of see over that 25-year career or whatever crazy amount of time it was, that and his teams were always successful generally early in the Thames Valley days, and then to Sheffield. just an underrated skill that he had that nobody would have ever talked about, but the people that were around him on those teams will know.
How did the opportunity, you were playing in Mansfield,
Yeah.
how did the opportunity come about to join Chris Finch and the Sheffield Sharks?
Chris, I think, came and watched at Mansfield a couple of our playoff games. So at the time, the structure is a bit different to it was now. So even back then, like the national leagues, there weren't as many teams, but the teams were a lot stronger than I think now. I think a lot of the times now, the talent's dispersed over more teams. Even in like Division Three, we had American players, and most teams had American players. So I think Chris had came down and watched a game, and he invited like a few of us up to be able to just go and train with the Sharks. And I ended up training with the Sharks for a whole season. And different people ended up doing different things. Like so, Dan Richards, he went off to scholarship in America. I can't remember what Tristan Lawson did, who eventually ended up in Sheffield. But yeah, I trained with the Sharks for a year, but still played at Mansfield. So I was kind of training every day with the team, but then getting to play. So when you talk about just kind of linking back to that thing about not playing much in Sheffield, before I went on the Sheffield team full time, I trained full time every day, but on weekends would then go and play matches. So all that stuff you were learning as a role player at Sheffield in training every day, you then got to go and do at Mansfield, where you're one of the better players and you could had a bit more license to try things in games, shall we say. And then from there, the next year I signed for Sheffield, and then I was at Sheffield for 2 years.
I was just wondering, the fact that you got to train with Sheffield all the time, did that help your game when you were still playing for Mansfield?
Oh, for sure. Like I was playing more, like I was playing basketball every day.
Mm.
Um, but what I was getting, playing, training, and going through all the stuff that you do when you're on a professional team. But then, still at a young age, I had the outlet to go and do that in competitive situations um, when it mattered. When it mattered, it's obviously it's National League. It's not you're not a professional. It's not your job. But everyone that plays in that environment is competitive. So I was getting to try and do those things, be it like a move you've worked on, be it like in the Sheffield offense, every time the ball got swung to you, because even at that point, like I wasn't really a shooter, like when I was younger. Um, but like when the ball would get swung to you, making sure you shot open shots every time, because that's what they expect you to do at Sheffield. Like working on, can I guard, even though I wasn't a point guard. Like, can I guard? I could ask the coach, can I guard the point guard in the game? Because that's sometimes what I have to do in training and practice. Practice those kind of things. So you had a bit more license to develop your game in a live competitive situation that was also then a bit out of the spotlight of like Chris wasn't there watching all the games, so you could try things, make mistakes, etc., and then take it back into training. I think it was, when you reflect back, it probably played a really key part in then developing over the future years. Because you see so many players now that, come into the team, don't get any minutes, and then drift out, and they're not playing in other leagues or lower down. And I don't know if that's something to do with the rules or something now, but I think back then we had the flexibility to kind of do all that stuff, and it really helped. It really helped me out.
And then let's move forward then. Are you 2 years in Sheffield?
Yeah.
How did that come to an end? And obviously, how did the move that defined your career to Newcastle come about?
I mean, it kind of a little bit like to the point like we started on about like not playing so much. Like by that point, I'd been there a couple of years. You'd you'd seen I'd seen an improvement training, an improvement physically because I kind of grew a little bit later in life. and then just the want of the opportunity, and then you've got to be realistic about it. Like Ian was still there, Mike Payne was there. On my last year, Terrell was there. I know he moved on. Nate Rankin, Pete Scance was there. So you kind of look at it, and that was that was a tough road to probably go through. And for Chris, like those guys had been successful for him. So for him to make a change, you know, at that point it's not that straightforward. Like I'd have to be so much better than Ian, so much better than Mike, and they were great players. So that's not easy to do. I mean, I think like Ian's percentage, like he shot a season like 50, like 55 something crazy percent on hundreds of shot attempts. Like, how do you outdo something like that? Like you can't. So I get it. Um, so I was looking for an opportunity, and then it kind of fell into place a little bit because Birmingham Bullets went into Europe. So Tony G moved from Newcastle to Birmingham to coach in Europe, and Fab had got the job in Newcastle. So I was like straight on the phone. I was like, make it happen. Please, like whatever you need to do, make it happen. Whatever I need to do. I really didn't care about the contract. I just wanted an opportunity. And I hassled him for a good couple of months, and he had to work some stuff. He had to work some stuff out on their side because, to be fair, Paul Blake, they'd invested in some young players, like times so like Graham Dotchin, and there was a couple of other younger guys coming through. So for Fab to like bring me as well in his first year as a coach with no track record, it was a bit of an ask of Fab too. But I think we'd obviously been teammates in Sheffield. So I think that he obviously saw something. We got on well as teammates, and I guess he saw something. Probably a little bit, although we're different players, like a little bit probably of the same attitude. And yeah, I was fortunate enough he took me up to Newcastle.
Was there any inkling of what might come when you joined Newcastle? This is before the silverware starts rolling in. What was the expectations when you joined the Eagles?
Well, no, I mean, I think there was the expectation. It was just getting to that point and learning. We had to learn how to get there. So when I first went, Fab was obviously there. TJ Walker and Jeremy Hyatt were both there. And they'd been, I think, at Newcastle for a couple of years. So like kind of two elite players were there in Newcastle. And then I think it was us about going, and we had, and in that year, the first year, we had Andrew Mavis too, who'd kind of just come off the couple of years before the Olympics, like who could absolutely shoot it, but he'd had an injury. So I think maybe it sat out, but and then we had an American forward called Nicky Arinzi, his first year out of college. I think he went to Wake. So yeah, we went up there, and you could see that there was a desire and aspiration. It was about just getting all the things kind of to fall in place. But Newcastle at that time was still growing as a club, like I know they're very community orientated now, but that's at that point. As players, we were heavily involved in that, and that journey, through growing the club and then getting to where we needed to get to. But I think Fab's thing at that time was he just wanted to be competitive. I don't think we expected to win, and I think we finished fourth or fifth that first year. And then I think we beat Thames Valley. Did we beat Thames Valley in the playoffs? And then
Yes.
maybe lost in the
I think you did.
Yeah, yeah.
I was a Thames Valley fan. We lost to Newcastle a few times.
And then we lost I think we lost in the semi-final then of the playoffs, and then that kind of like just gave everybody the taste. Because I think Newcastle before that they've been to a couple of finals. I think they lost to Chester in a trophy final. That Jet Wash year maybe. So it kind of set or like gave everybody desire to do it, and then the following year, like Fab developed like a core group that came back. Oh yeah, we had Charles Smith that year too. So he turned out all right. Uh, but yeah, it kind of, and then Fab kind of kept that group together. And then his thing was about just finding the right pieces to add, which which took him a bit of time, like 2 or 3 years to do it. So he had that group, and then he added really like English players, solid English players around that, and then um, we would just drop in that either one or two Americans in and out each year. But we really had that consistency, which helped us.
You won your first trophies with Newcastle in the 2004-05 season. Just very quickly, obviously you'd won while you were at Sheffield.
Yeah.
Did it feel different winning your first trophies Newcastle because you played more of a role towards them, or yeah, it did.
Yeah, I mean, it felt a bit different in that sense. Like, nothing like you obviously contribute, everybody contributes, like, but it's in different ways. And it was actually, when that contribution's actually in a live game in front of, thousands of people, it means more. But like, we obviously, people look to the final, but like actually I probably had one of in the semi-final of the trophy, we played Cheshire, and both semi-finals were at Telly West Arena, I think it was at the time. And we were down quite big to Cheshire in the first quarter. It's probably, I was trying to think about it. It might have been, it's definitely in the top 2 or 3 games of my career that I ever played was a semi-final. Didn't really do too much in the final, but in
You got them there.
terms of like, yeah, no, we're like scoring and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
like the game in the semi-final, like the semi-final was one of the best games I probably ever played, and unfortunately, no one seems to have got a copy of the tapes. I'm telling people, telling the kids, I'm like, I used to be able to do this, and they're like looking at you, nah, show me, and I can't. So, if anyone's got a copy of that trophy semi-final from 2005, I guess it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a copy of that.
All right. Well, there it goes out to the community. And from there, you talked about the jet wash season for Chester. The
Yeah,
following year, you get to do the Queen's Sweep of Honours. What was that
yeah.
experience like for you? You see, like I said, you've seen a team like Chester do it a few years before, but you get a chance to experience it yourself for your team.
Yeah, I think we kind of got a taste a couple of years before, and then it was just like relentlessness towards it. Like, Fab, you used to come in and say like, I want to win everything. I don't want to lose a game, which is not necessarily realistic to never lose a game through the season, but we kind of went in and we got off to a good start. And I think if to take the sweep out of it, any team that wants to win the league in the BBL or SLB, whichever iteration is, you've got to get out to a good start. And we kind of always came out like by Christmas every year, like 1 or 2 losses, or will put us in place. And I think if you look over the last 6, 7 years, the team that's been best around that has been like Leicester and Rob Paternoster, and he's got that consistency like to his team, and they beat the teams they should, and they don't rack up losses, and that then puts you in position to do it. So we kind of jumped out on that, and then thinking the cup final, we came out and we absolutely battered the London Towers, I think. And once we did that, yeah, it seemed like it could be a possibility, which it was. But that year we were up at Glasgow, I think, with a rival in the league. Or they might have been Scottish Rocks at that time, but they were the rival, kind of going back and forth because we had all the England Commonwealth Games stuff kind of mixed in and around all that, which was cool. So yeah, like I think once we had like minimal losses and we got the first one, like it kind of became a possibility. But that team was like that was a deep team. Like if you speak to people like now, that Darius Defoe, who I guess most people who would listen to this will know about, that was his first or second year really in the league.
He's
He
still
was
going.
just He's still going. Yeah, I don't know how he's still going, but he was just like an athletic phenom back then,
Mm.
and he didn't play that much. Whereas you look all like through the next 20 years, like how instrumental he is still is in everything Newcastle do. And I know people develop like as players, but like he was our eighth, ninth, 10th man at that point. So we were like deep team, and we added Olu Babalola like halfway through the season as well. So kind of a few things just fell into place for us. And even all the teams to do that, you have to be lucky. Cheshire, didn't really have any injuries when they did it. The 2 years I did it, we were pretty blessed, injury wise, because we had the first year we had a bigger rotation. The second year in 2012, like we really played like seven guys.
Yeah.
Um, do that,
You're getting
do
ahead
that.
of me now.
Yeah.
But I just wondering because I was wondering, obviously, that first clean sweep, you're like three trophies down, and then you go into the playoff final. Is it was it? Can you remember that at all? Like,
Yeah, we
something special today, or it was
yeah,
just
yeah.
like business as usual?
Well, I mean, I think because back then it was like a Final Four weekend, so we came out and we played amazing on the semi-final against Guildford. Like played really, really well, like across the board. Remember, Drew Sullivan had a good game. I shot the ball really well that game. And then so we're in the final, and then we were down at half time, and we weren't playing well at all. And it was kind of like in the changing room, we were like, "Are we really going to let this happen? Like, is this happening?" We came out in the second half. Fab like switched the lineups up, and he didn't really make many subs in the second half of that game, and we just kind of turned it up defensively, and that's why we won. Like we went, pretty sure we went to like quite a bit of zone, which. We did play zone, but Fab's generally a man-to-man coach on defense, so he kind of switched it up at that point, and we had a pretty small lineup for the second half, and yeah, we came back. I think we ended up winning by 16, something like that. It was a pretty big point swing from in the second half in our favour, but by that point it was. I'm sure it's different for everyone. I think for me, though, just a bit of relief because like the pressure was probably on to do it then. Probably more so internally that we wanted to do it, but I think it was more a sense of relief at that point that we'd managed to do it.
I'd say we can jump ahead now, but obviously you got a chance to do that sweep of honours again in your final season in Newcastle. How did that feel compared to the first one?
I think the first time you've achieved something that not many people had done, and um, you were excited to do it and do something. I think the second time it was, I think internally it became an expectation. Like we've got the team. As long as we didn't run into any injuries, it was like, yeah, we can do this. I think it was a new team that year. The other team was kind of Worcester in the league, and I think that was probably one of their first. Although they had coach, I think PJ was a coach then. Um, but I think we always felt that we were probably definitely a better team, and we kind of expected to do it. There was a couple of other years we had a chance at it. I think in 2007 we won the league, lost both cup and trophy final. So it's not always a given that you're going to get there. And I think a couple of the other years we won three and didn't get the cup. Um, so we'd been close a few times, and I think that year we got off to a really good start, and then I think it was like in amongst us we expected it because you'd got like four, I think, guys that had done it before, so you kind of
I was just about to ask you that, yeah.
yeah, you kind of like we'd done it, we'd been close a couple of times, so we were like, we need to kind of get this sorted, and I think it was an expectation internally that we would do it, and we signed Tomo that year. So it would like done 3 trophies the year before at Mersey, I think. So, we knew, I think the guys that were there, we knew we'd added an established player that had been close as well. So I think that probably helped drive the expectation.
I always felt, to me, one of the best parts of your game was your defense. You just seem to throw yourself into every situation. You're never worried about taking a charge. You're like you. Was that a key part of your game, in your opinion?
Um, I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people knew that, but like I think you just have to just kind of give it a bit of reality, for want of a better word. So, if you'd throw me out there and said, guard TJ Walker, Terrell Myers in a game of one-on-one, like that wouldn't have gone that well for me. I think what I was able to do was defend within a system to a set of principles, which is what Fab developed through his career, and Chris had those too. They were just slightly different, but I was able to defend in that format like very well. The other thing I think I tried to do was just to not get outworked, and understand the nuances of the things that I would be involved in, like getting over screens. Like I was always going to be involved in that situation, and understanding that I was probably always going to be targeted as well, especially early in my career, and then at the end when I couldn't really move how I needed to, and just understanding that, like, because has everybody can defend in basketball if they want to. I just think if you put a bit of time into just understanding the situations like you do on offense, like how you're going to attack on offense as an individual, like you probably spend a lot of time in the summer working on your game, working on all these moves because our defender's going to do this. I need to do this. This is how this team plays. Like you can do that on the other side of the ball as well. And yeah, again, I'm probably a little bit fortunate that, Fab was first and foremost a defender. So like when you're working out in the summers with him, like there was lots of things you could pick up, but it was just, just really having an understanding of how we were trying to play, or my teammates, like how they would defend as well. So, when I was playing with Leonard, well, you know, just get up on the guy and force him to the basket, and he'll be there to block it. Type scenario. So understanding those things and understanding the player, that you were guarding. Do they want to catch and go right? Do they want to catch and go left? Are they gonna shoot? Just understanding things like that. I think that's why I was able to do well in terms of necessarily having the foot speed to defend one-on-one. Probably wasn't my strength, but I could defend fast players in that way. I would guard Rob Yanders when I would play against him, which on paper makes absolutely no sense in the world because
He's a player,
brilliant, brilliant three-point shooter, brilliant player, rapid. It makes no sense. But because I'm 4 or 5 inches taller than him, I've got long arms, I can bother his three-point shot, which is what we were trying to take away as a rule. And again, that height allowed me to, even though I wasn't as fast, recover and bother him a little bit as he gets to the basket, knowing full well that Leonard's back there, that Fab's back there, that Charles Smith's back there to also affect that play. And that's how I was able to defend. And the other thing I was able to do, I could guard bigger players, which really helped me out. Just having that ability to guard someone that was, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". I could do that as well and make it difficult. But again, it's the same thing. It's understanding what they want to do and what we want to force them into, really.
You talked about some of the players you defended. Who was your favorite opponent when you were a player? Who's the guy or guys you enjoyed defending the most?
Defending the most.
Or yeah, tell you what, you can flip it round, or even the least.
I remember the most excited. I don't know if it's most excited, but when my second year in Sheffield, Terrell had left to go to London. Terrell Myers had left to go to London because they're in the Euro League, and obviously we're playing BBL, and um, I think we played him in the cup, and we came back, and I think we had injury at Sheffield, and I think Jeff Monaco might have been injured, and Nate slid across from the two to the one, and Ian started, which meant I was going to get to play like a lot more in that game. So going and matching up against Terrell, who like he's like I only spent like a couple of seasons around him, but as someone that was so positive, so supportive, so encouraging to me, individually and like a one-to-one relationship, like having playing that matchup was like I was super excited about that. And I think I think he only scored like 5 points in that game. Nothing to do with me. Like we won Sheffield. We shouldn't have won that game. We won that game. I think it was a trophy game. So maybe like Towers are playing Euro League and or whatever they were playing back then. And this is like a midweek game up in Sheffield. So it might not have been top of their radar. But you know, that was a bit insane to me, like to do that. So I really enjoyed that. Um, I had some like great battles with like Sully, like when he left and like he went to like Leicester. I think we played against each other for like a couple of years. Obviously, we played together a lot, know each other really well. So that was always good fun. Again, a matchup that didn't really make sense from my
I was about to
like
say, would that
my
be a matchup?
side. Well, I think like my last year in Sheffield, like I was playing the three, and at Leicester, he was playing the three. So it
Right.
just kind of like it's just kind of how it worked out. And when he was at Mersey as well and stuff like that. But I mean, I had some crazy matchups. Like Dave, when Dave Forrester came on, like a lot of people in the community will know Dave came on as like assistant coach. He would like, be doing the scout, and he's like, "Yeah, Bridgie, you've got Dave Aliu." I'm like, "What?" Like, he's big guy. You've got Rowe. I'm like, what? Like, I'm like, this makes no sense. But or Andy Thompson. But at that time, that was when the game's changing. Those guys like to shoot from the perimeter a little bit more. I'm like, yeah, but Dave, when they see me on them, Rowe just goes in the post and absolutely beats me up. But
Oh, so
it's
you're responsible for Ant Rose one good season then? No, I'm only kidding.
maybe. I was also there in that game where we hammered them by like 40 in the cup. So no, like so it was that stuff was always interesting to me. Like when like the coaches would do that and I enjoyed stuff like that. And in the game, the games when you play Sheffield and you play like Ian and Mike and that and Pete in like real life games, that was always good. And the other like Yorick, I always enjoy playing Yorick as well. You kind of, you know, when he was like 5 feet inside the half they were shooting into, anything could have happened. It could have gone up and been shot at any point. So like that was always a fun matchup for me and whatnot. And I think there was well hopefully there was some mutual respect there, like kind of both ways. We just played hard. Like Yorick's a great guy off the court. And you, you hear that he does great things in his local community with all the people there, and that was always fun to me in those guys. He just played hard, like a lot. He has a bit of reputation, but he's just out there playing hard. Which you've always got to respect.
No, I totally agree. And Yorick Williams just completely different off the court. I used to love interviewing him as well. Just a different character completely. Great guy to talk to. Um, let's talk about Fab. What was Fab like as a coach for you, and what did he do to change your game?
Um, so for me, I think there's a perception of Fab as a coach that's probably not the actual reality in life. So he's had that player doing the player coach role, and he always came across as loud, aggressive, direct in your face, like to people like on the outside. And I can see like in games that's if you're in the crowd, that's what you would see. But you've got to think the adrenaline's flowing. But on the flip side, I've definitely seen coaches that aren't player coaches be like that as well. Um, but I think what's really underrated about Fab is his like ability with like X's and O's and plays and scheming and planning and things like that. So that was always there, and that he taught you that stuff too. Although we had like some pretty high IQ players, like he would, that level of detail, that knowledge, like he passed through to his players. He was always pushing you, and he kind of had a thing like he's like, if you work on a move and you do it in a game, I'm going to say nothing to you. He's like, if you just do something I've never seen you do before, that vein in the side of his head will start throbbing, like when everybody knew what that meant when that started going, and he would have let you have it. But like he was, so like encouraging and not restrictive, like of his players at all. Like in general, like on defense, like if you weren't doing what you're supposed to do, you were going to hear about it. But like he gave freedom on offense, like to be creative, to do things as long as you worked on those things. He was okay with you. It is crazy. Like if you think where he is now and the way they play the game in the NBA and the distances and everything they shoot from. I remember in my second or third year, we were shooting those shots in practice. Like I never dared shoot one in a game, and I mean, you probably would now if you were playing, but like we had drills where we were shooting threes from like 5, 7, 8 feet behind. And I bet if you went and got tape out, you'd see Jeremy Hyatt shoot those shots in a game and make those shots. But it was like that he either was studying the game and saw that was things like that were going to happen. But it was like his aptitude for coaching, his understanding of the game probably was overlooked massively, just because he had the other role.
So let's bring your time at Newcastle to an end. You get to finish your final season with the Eagles was that second clean sweep. How did it come about for you then to leave Newcastle after the end of that year?
That was like a pretty tough situation. I think for everybody. By that point, I think I was probably starting to decline a little bit in terms of like more so probably physically than anything else. And I think as well, to be fair, like the game was evolving, and I was pretty tied to like these are all the things we've done and we've been successful, and the style of play was changing a little bit. And in hindsight, maybe I didn't embrace that as much as I could have. Um, you know, we had a formula that was winning, and I'm like, we just won four, and I suppose it spoke a little bit to Fab's. We won four playing a slightly different way than the first time, but yeah, I was probably a bit more hesitant, and like, me and Fab spoke about it, got into it like a few times, off the court, and he's like, I need you to shoot these shots. I'm like, I don't think they're good shots, Fab, which is kind of a bit strange. Like when the coach is telling you to do something and like the player's resistant to shooting. So it just kind of, I suppose, in one sense, came to a natural end through that, through some, others, other stuff. I was, no point. I was like well paid at that time, like especially for the BBL, and from Paul Blake's side and Fab's side, like that would have been a chunk of their budget, when they were trying to go in a different way. So I spoke to Sarah Bakovic at Sheffield, and they made it happen, and it was kind of a nice bookend for me, like actually going back and having a season at Sheffield where I played and played a lot. So that was, that's kind of how it came about. And again, in hindsight, that you would never have known, it worked. It worked out like as well as it could have because we won a trophy in Sheffield that season, and
I'd say you're going back to
Newcastle didn't.
completely, yeah, yeah, exactly. You're going back to a team which is completely different sharks to the one you left. Ownership, venue, everything's completely different.
Yeah,
But yeah, I got to talk about that season because obviously you won a couple of clean sweeps with the Eagles. I mean, you didn't know at the time, but when you won that trophy final, of course, you're ultimately ending Leicester's hopes because they would
yeah,
win the other three that year.
yeah.
Let's let's talk about that final season. You said you got to play a lot more. What was the final your highlight of that season, or was there something else that stood out
Yeah,
for you?
no doubt. Like we had a really rough start. Like they made a couple of changes to the team early on um, that kind of changed things around, and then we kind of got on a bit of a roll, but not to the point where we were going to be influential and challenging for the leagues. And less Leicester generally that year were a really tough matchup for us. I think they blew us out in like every other time we played them, which was difficult. But when you get to kind of a final, um, sometimes it is different. There's not that many blowouts in finals. There are some, but there's not that many. Um, and we matched in theory and on paper, we matched up quite well with Leicester. Just in the time, every time before we played them, the reality was it didn't work out in our favor. So full credit to them in all those games, but you know, finals a little bit different. A little bit tighter sometimes in a venue that no one plays in, which was the Emirates at Glasgow inside the running track. So that's a new thing for everybody. And it was a close, tight game. Like, we were up a bit, they were up a bit, and it came down to a couple of plays at the end that went in our favour on that occasion. I mean, maybe I don't. People said, and you read, oh, Leicester were heavy favourites. They'd have looked past you. Like, I know people on that team. I can't believe that was a situation with like Rob Paternoster involved and Drew Sullivan, Rowe. I can't believe that was the situation. They wouldn't have done that, but they're going for it for the first time, and they got the first one, and we're probably going to get the league, and maybe the little bit of pressure there. Who knows?
I'm trying to think. Was that the season where you were in danger of missing the playoffs at that point? I'm
I
trying to
think we
think.
finished seventh. We finished seventh, yeah.
But I think at that point you weren't in the
Were we
playoff race
out?
as such,
I can't
or
remember.
close to it. I can't remember. I just feel was that the season you were really struggling. Then of course beating Leicester in that
Yeah,
final.
yeah, we did get on a roll. We did win a bunch of games towards the end. We had a bad start. Like I said, we had a bad start. We were pretty average at that point, but we got on a roll, kind of figured out a way to play. Like we changed, we had a BJ Holmes and then we added a guy called Demetrius Jameson, and that kind of helped us out. And we just kind of figured out a way we could be competitive in the games. And we were a good defensive team. We just struggled a bit to score, but we kind of figured it out enough in the end. And I can't remember how many games you had to win the trophy that year, but we got it together enough at that point. And then I think we pretty much we made the playoffs, but we pretty much flamed out after that.
But you mentioned a little while ago about a bookend to your career. Obviously, can't do better than winning the trophy, can you, to finish? Did you know at that point you were hanging them up, or did that come later?
Probably knew. I probably knew in the February. Um, like we used practice at EAS, and I remember like we were doing a drill, and I remember I did part of the drill, and I remember thinking to myself like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I think for me, it was more of a case of frustration than anything else, than not wanting to play. Yeah, it was harder to play at that point, like physically, but I think it was more the fact that I couldn't do the things I'd been able to do previously, or do them the way I wanted to do them. And it was just frustrating, that more than anything. Players I could compete with, or I thought maybe I was better than, were, scoring on me, beating me, or at the same level as me. And I just, I struggled to do that. Like plays I would make, or rebounds I would get, or, drives, um, like getting to the basket, like that was kind of not really happening. Like at that point, I was just like, basically becoming like just a standstill shooter, and that wasn't ever always really my game. Like I used to get offensive rebounds. I used to be, we could get to the basket and get on ones and all that stuff, but that kind of just wasn't happening, and it was just frustrating more than anything. So I kind of knew. I trained all summer, like I was going to come back. Um, Sheffield kept a spot open for me, which was great. But yeah, I just knew, like at that point. I was still living in Newcastle as well, like generally. And that the year after, I practiced with Newcastle a couple of times. But yeah, which was cool and everything, but it never went anywhere. I think I'm not sure, I'm not sure if I could have played, like, because when I knew I was going to retire, like I don't know, if I had a midlife crisis or something, but I signed up to do a Tough Mudder, because you couldn't do that while you were playing because of your contracts and everything. So I did that and lost a bunch of weight and got like real skinny. And I remember going to one of those practices with Newcastle, and Drew Lasker hit me, and like I came up all bruised and like couldn't move for a couple of days. I'm like, I'm not sure I could play basketball this skinny. Like those guys that play that skinny, I don't know how they do it. It's just crazy. So I'm like, wow, man, if Lasker did that to me, like what happens if I run into like Olu or Mike Tuck or anybody like that? I'm like, I'd literally be broken. So yeah, it never really went anywhere, in terms of coming back. And I'm glad, and I go backwards and forwards. Could you have, but I think it's probably worked out the best in the end, because I could have come back and, if I'd come back and not won or anything like that, I would have been annoyed.
I'd say that trophy is a nice bookend to your career. Before we stop talking about your career, so I can't obviously not mention the fact you got a chance to represent England at the Commonwealth Games. What was that experience like for you?
I mean, that was great. Like that 2 years, we like the year before 2006, or the summers before, we were playing all over Europe all the time. It was pretty much like a full-time schedule in the summer. So, I think we went to Serbia, Portugal. I can't remember. We went so many, so many places, Estonia, I think, so many places and play game, which was great. And it was cool, like it was predominantly like BBL players, like in that team, and I think the team that went out was all BBL. But like get to know and kind of hang out a bit with the people you kind of competed against. When we got out to Australia, it was like a bit surreal at that point. The Commonwealth Games were like still, I know they're massive still now, but like they were like a big deal then, especially in a country like Australia. So yeah, it was a bit nuts, really. It was hard because we would have, even especially during that like 2006, 5, 6 season and before, we'd have like training camps, like they scheduled training camp like every month. So we played BBL games and then bang, we were like in training camp for 2, 3 days with the national team, back to the club, etc., etc. But yeah, so it was run as well as it could have been run in a bit of an unusual situation where it was during the year, and it was while we were doing that, like the team was still playing. So we're like on the other side of the world. At that point, like internet and streaming and that is not what we all know today. So
You
so
aged yourself there, Andrew.
yeah, yeah, but like we didn't know scores like of
Yeah.
games. So me and Sully were just kind of like, it's the week Saturday, Sunday. Oh, we know we've got games. Like, where's Fab? What kind of mood's Fab in? Like, because he would have like been involved in the prep and all that stuff. Like, and they won. They won every game. They played 8 games while we were away. They won 7 and lost the last one. So Fab was fine while we were away for like a month. Then he lose the last one, and like I think he's on the same day as we played like the medal game. So we've got the medal, and Newcastle have gone and lost to I think Chester. Fab is fuming, and like we're there, and like we're like, oh, we're in trouble here. So like we've done this thing in Australia. They've like kind of broken open the league, and Fab was fuming, absolutely fuming. And we got back, and he absolutely battered us. Like when we got back, I remember the first training session, he went absolutely mental. Like and me and Sully like, what's going on here? Like, yeah, crazy. And then we played a game. I think 2 days. Did we fly? We flew back on the weekend, and we played a game in Sheffield actually. A couple of days after we got back, I think Charles Smith scored about 40 points. I just remember that I was not. Oh, Drew was injured. He got injured in the Commonwealth, so he didn't play, and I was kind of I wasn't with it from like the jet lag or whatever. I remember he put me in the game, and after about 2 or 3 minutes, I had the ball at half court and I just picked it up and started running. Like I was like practically I wasn't in the game at all. Like didn't put me on after that. They had like smelling salts on the bench and stuff, and they did. I was like, nah, forget that. I was like, don't put me back on. And we ended up winning the game, but Fab like played the whole game, put himself in straight in the starting lineup because they'd lost, and like literally played the whole game. That's like how much of a freak of nature, body, physicality wise. Obviously, we all know he played to like in his 40s and everything to a high level, but got for playing from Australia, like literally played the whole game. Like you would never have known he'd just done that. Where and me, I couldn't like barely put 2 feet in front of each other. So yeah, so it was a surreal experience, one that all of us involved probably never thought was going to happen because national team was a bit of a on and off thing, like at that point. But they got it, we got it together, and we were fortunate enough to win a medal as well, which was a bit nuts. Also, like playing like there's hostile crowds, and then there's stuff you just can't even put into words. Like the tournament, like I think it was the one sport in the games that they kind of took to the townships around Melbourne. So the basketball we played in smaller venues, and then for the semi-finals and final, they brought us back into Melbourne. I think it's the tennis where the Australian Open tennis is played, one of the arenas, and they put it in, and we played Australia in the semi-final. So like when people talk about over here, they know about like cricket and the Ashes and everything like that. When every time you catch a ball, like you're getting booed. It was that like banter between English and Australian fans and everything like that. So it was something you never like 15,000 people. You never thought you'd be in an environment or experience anything like that. And then so we lost that game, and then we were fortunate enough to win the game in the third place game, win the bronze medal.
And do you have that bronze medal sitting somewhere safely?
It's downstairs, like in the
Do you
in
look
the
at it
hall.
often, or
I mean, I
just
don't. I just walk straight past it, like every time I come in now. So it's like it's the like the shirt. I got the white England shirt in a frame, and my England cap and the medal. They're just in a frame, surrounded by like just a bunch of family photos and stuff. But I don't. I just walk straight past it. Almost forget it's there now.
a great experience for you? And we go back. So we were talking before that about sort of retiring. What's life been like for you since you stopped playing? And was it easy to adjust to not playing, or like I said, did it take you a while?
No, I think kind of like I mentioned that I deliberately chose something to focus on that was out of my kind of normal thing that I would do, like in terms of just lots of pure running and stuff like that to get to do the Tough Mudder. So that helped. I did quite a bit of work for like the Youth Sport Trust on one of their programs, in a lot of their different programs that they do, but like a lot of like schools work, which is going in working with kids, sharing your athlete journey and how you've done. And that was kind of like you were going in, you were talking about your experiences. Kids are asking you unfiltered questions, so you kind of get to give your thoughts, your experiences, and that kind of helped me. It was like a bit of an outlet for the things that you'd gone through. I think the other big thing that helped me out, and from getting to know athletes from other sports in that scenario and some of the stories and journeys they go on through, I think for me, I kind of went out on my own terms. Like the decision was mine. And athletes or people that you see have struggled, some of my feeling around that is they're the people that couldn't make their own decision or choice. So it was maybe through injury, you know, and they didn't go out on their own terms and they have to deal with the challenges and the emotional experience that comes with that. Whereas I didn't have to do that. I could have kept playing if I wanted to. I chose not to, and I think that helped me be at peace with with that decision.
Does it feel like it's been, what, 12 years since you hung them up?
Yeah, 12.
Does it feel like it's that long, if you know what I mean? Does it feel like that? It's like a
Yeah,
different world.
it's different now. Like when
Yeah.
you see it now, you watch it, you're like, ah, there's good stuff going on. There's sometimes stuff you scratch your head at. What I would say is about the state of the game now and the players, especially like the talent across the board, like in the depth of talent and the skill that a lot of the players have, or most of the players have, is probably in a higher than when I played, like across the duration of my career in terms of the shot making, the shot creating, and all that stuff. No, the game's different, but the talent that they have, that's obviously come through the system, whichever road they take through the system, through junior basketball, like is better now. Whether that's because you know players when I came through, oh, you're 6 foot whatever, you're a post player, that's all you do, you don't dribble. Whereas that seems to have totally gone out now, and the post players have all those skills, guard skills as well. So that's great across the board. Maybe if you look back to like when I played, I probably think the basketball IQ was better,
Mm.
like back then. Again, probably, you know, a generational thing through, the way we were brought up, more focus on that side of the game and stuff like that. But talent wise, I think we're in a good place, and I think you can kind of see that with if you step outside BBL, SLB, like to now players that we have playing in Europe, like at really good level, like Quinn Ellis, like he's out there. We probably a lot of people probably don't see him, but like he's doing things over there in Italy. The kid that just got drafted to the NBA that came through Mansfield,
I was going to ask
like
you about Amari. Yeah.
yeah, that
Does that
that
make,
that's
because
stuff.
you're a Mansfield guy, aren't you?
Yeah,
How
I
does
mean,
that
I've
make
never.
you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I've never met the kid, but it's really pleasing for like Ian and Dan Richards that would, Ian Richards was the coach when I was there. Like Dan was my teammate, so that's amazing. That's happened, and I think that's either we're a bit more aware of, but I think it's happening a bit more often, and I think that's going to continue to grow. We just, if we can take the league in this country, keep it going on its current trajectory and make the things better that we need to make better, we're going to be in hopefully like in another 10 years, we'll be in a good place.
Yeah, you talked about Quinn Ellis. I love watching Quinn play, and I've been fortunate to commentate a few of his games in Eurocup when he's at Trento. And of course, next season he's going to be playing in EuroLeague. So to have a
Yeah.
Brit in EuroLeague for me is always a great thing because he's joined Olympia Milan now. Um, Going back to the
And
NBA
like
thing.
just on Quinn,
Sorry,
like if you
Gone.
think like, he's from Sheffield, like his family, his grounding around that area, that's I don't know the kid, but I know the family and the situation. So, I know he's gonna be a mentally strong, tough kid. And I think that's the for the explosion to continue. That's the thing. I think that it's taking these kids over the edge that are going out there and having that experience now. That generation's kind of coming through. So you know, um, people, I mean, like your kids are like 14, 15, 16, so if you've got like the parents, like, so when I was younger, like basketball wasn't pushed as like a family thing, but maybe you've got a parent like Vanessa, for Quinn that, have got all that grounding, and you say you're going to have that mental, and now you've got the physical, whereas it was kind of probably just one or the other back then, and now we're kind of piecing it together like the rest of the world. So I think the opportunities for all these players coming through, and the world's a much smaller place now. Everybody's a bit more aware. Would anybody have known about Quinn Ellis like 15 years ago? We would, but would he have gone on that journey? And fair play to the kid.
No, I'm really excited for what he can do. Just on another point, we're talking about the NBA. How does it feel? You two coaches that you played for are now in the NBA. Obviously, Chris Finch at Minnesota, and Fab's an assistant coach in the NBA as well. How does that feel knowing that? Did you ever expect them to go on to that sort of level? Was that a surprise to you?
And it's not a surprise, like knowing the people. I think at the time it wasn't a normal path. Like, how would you have drawn a link between the BBL and the NBA like 25 years ago? Like when I first started playing for Chris, you wouldn't have necessarily made that link. You'd have had it the other way, where I think we had some players that came in a bit of on the gravy train at the end of their careers in like old Budweiser league, but you wouldn't have necessarily drawn the distinction the other way. But I mean, I'm sure they've had to change how they coach, but I think what they both were progressive coaches. Like, so they can see that when I played for them both, it was like a defensive first mentality, really. But Chris had a free flowing offense. But if you'd asked me at that point to say, what's he going to be known for? Like defense, but actually now he's one of the preeminent minds offensively in the NBA. Like, it's what you read and what you see and what you say. So it's no surprise to me that they're in that. I think what they both had, and I know from speaking to Fab a little bit. I've not spoken to Chris since he was in the NBA, but speaking to Fab, like, the workload's the same, if not even more. You're just not doing all the jobs yourself, but you're working just as hard. So, if Fab is, in his role, he has a group of players that he oversees and works with and everything like that. If that player wants to work out at 1 o'clock in the morning, Fab's at the gym at 1 o'clock in the morning scenario. So, you can see how they've taken those work ethics, and made it to the NBA in different ways. Chris obviously went on the journey through Europe a little bit, and then G League. Fab obviously went through Nick Nurse, but Nick had been away from the BBL a little bit, so they'd obviously maintained a relationship, and Nick was aware of what he was doing. So I sometimes I just kind of think about it like, there's probably not too many players that got absolutely annihilated, told how bad they were off two NBA coaches, and then Nick Nurse coached against me, and he used to tell me how bad I was, like on the sideline and stuff too. So it's a bit crazy, like when you think about that.
It does feel a bit surreal because obviously Nick won an NBA title with Toronto. Chris Finch got Minnesota so close to the finals this year, and of course, like I said, Fab's an assistant for Nick. It just feels really, really bizarre, but it just shows that coming to Britain, doesn't hinder your career.
No. And Nate Rankin is in the system, or in Cleveland, or was in the system in Cleveland. And then one of my other teammates from the first clean sweep, John Bryant. I don't know what team he's at now, but he's coaches and he's in the NBA system as well. And I'm sure there's probably other examples of other players in the team.
Yeah, I mean, there's if obviously it's more recent after your career, but Ryan Schmidt, who came over and coached the Lions.
Oh yeah.
Of course, assistant coach at the Atlanta Hawks now. So it shows, come to England, never know, get to the NBA. That could be a good selling point in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, it could.
So it feels to me a little bit like you still keep up with the game in the UK. How do you go about doing that? Are you watching games, watching podcasts, or listening to them?
Yeah, I watch now because the games are there. I watch most of them on a weekend, however it is, or through the week, which is it's a great it's a great thing for the game. It's good that the BBL have managed to jump on that and do the deal and make all their games available. I listen to the podcasts as well. I don't go to as many games as live as I might want to or should, when life gets in the way and kids are doing other things and stuff on a weekend. But I keep up with it as much as I can. I try and keep, speak to, people that are around the game, just to keep a pulse on it. Obviously there's this, you get the media stories and everything, but it's sometimes good to kind of, understand from people what's going on, what's the real story, etc., etc. So yeah, I keep up with it as much as I can.
Any podcasts or shows or anything in particular?
I guess my favorite one is SMB. I message Dave and Dan and stuff like that. Just to on. I think like, obviously I was around Dave like a lot, so kind of know what he's gonna say before he said it live on air. And I'll message Dan and be like, this is what's coming, and like Dan obviously knows him as well. So that's good. But yeah, I think they do a great job like giving an alternative like kind of view and insight into the league and the players and what people are trying to achieve and like why they're trying to achieve it, which I think is a good way, hopefully to educate the audience.
I just want to ask you then quickly about Dave Forrester. Then, what was the dynamic like in the locker room with Dave and Fab? Because obviously, you explained how Fab is like. What did Dave bring to it?
I mean, Dave like brought the encyclopedic knowledge of like data, stats, understanding. Like he knew all the other team, he knew our team. I think he probably walked into some of those half times and after game things thinking, what's going to happen here? I know the coaches saw before they come in, but and there were times where Fab could be all right, and then I don't know, he just gets to talking and he would just lose it. So I think, Dave sometimes probably wondered, what was going on like a lot of the rest of us. But he definitely like kind of like I remember him like when I first went to Newcastle, he was like sat courtside, like having a go at the refs, the crowd, the opposition, the
Oh,
Newcastle
is this when he
team.
was a season ticket holder? He used
Yeah,
to
when he
sit
was
on the
season ticket
sideline.
holder. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. And then like he was obviously, doing a bit of the scouting and stuff like that. And then he came on as like assistant coach, and then, Fab he got suspended one time. He was head coach, and then he wasn't very well. And like Dave's the head coach for I don't know how many games and stuff like that. So, it was a bit crazy. Um, I remember. I think one of the first games, like he was like head coach and like just with me, like we're down players and whatever, and I think I'd played the whole first half of a game, and he was like, "I'm gonna bring you out to rest you." I'm like, "Dave, there's 15 seconds left. I'm not coming out." Like, but which is like not really a Dave thing to do, because he was like so on top of all the analytical stuff.
Mm.
So you can see like sometimes you get thrown into it. The other thing with Dave is like with the team, you never knew what he was going to turn up wearing. You know, the shirt and tracksuit bottoms and like dress shoes was a go-to look for a while for Dave. But
Was this in coming straight from work then, maybe?
I hope so. I hope he'd not gone to work like that. But he was a great, and he was always thinking outside the box. Like I think I referenced it before, like, oh, Bridget, you've got so and so, like you've got Dave Allen, you've got Tomo, you've got Rowe, and then the next game you've got Yanders, and like so he's always kind of thinking around that. Because they're going to shoot jump shots, so we don't want a big player away from the basket, like whatever his thinking was. around that time, and he evolved like well, they've never said, but I'm going to assume he evolved like some of the things that had been core principles for Fab, like based on percentages, based on data. Because we always used to force everyone to the baseline in the early years, and then you could see when Dave got there a little bit, like force this player left, even if it was to the middle. You know, we had even points where we were like, don't guard that player. I'm like, what? Like, don't guard him. Like, which is, a weird thing to tell about player, but great guy, like really passionate about it, still clearly passionate about it, probably a little frustrated about some of the stuff that goes on, like a few people are, but I mean, and then he was there after I left too, so and that success continued. He's recruited some like great players like to the league as well. And I'm sure probably he's still involved in some kind of way up there in Newcastle. But yeah, it was he's a good guy to be around, and it's good that he's forging his own media career.
I'd say without him, SMB would just be 5 minutes of Dan saying the results. That's what it'd be. We're going to have to bring it to a close there. I think it's a great topic to finish on. It's been an absolute pleasure to get you on today, Andrew. It's been so good to look back on your career, some of the highs, the lows, and I wish you all the best for whatever you do in the future. Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, thank you. No worries.
And finally, if you're enjoying what we do, please make sure to like, subscribe, or even share the pod on your social media. Every little bit of support helps. Until next time, my name's Niall Gray. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Eurostep Brit podcast, a hoops and hockey production.